Alright guys, and welcome back to the channel, and today I will be giving you my full card predictions and full card breakdown for UFC 315 live Saturday, May 10th from the Bell Center in Montreal, Canada, and I absolutely cannot wait to get into it. And we're going to go ahead and jump right into the very first fight of the night, which is Daniel Willie Cat Santos versus Zhang Yang Li, and a very interesting fight here at featherweight. Over on the Daniel Santos side, very explosive striker, very slick, but Daniel Santos has not fought in almost 2 years. It was a year and 10 months ago when he last fought, picking up a win against Johnny Munoz Jr. He's a very slick striker, very explosive, very fluid, comes out of Shootbox Diego Lima, which is a great gym. And, on top of him not almost fighting for 2 years, Daniel Santos is taking this fight on extreme short notice. He literally just in the last 2 or 3 days stepped into this fight, I believe. And, extreme short notice fight for him. Hasn't fought in 2 years, so, has some kind of disadvantages coming into this fight. But then we look over on the Zhang Yang Li side, and in his last fight, he got absolutely lit up by Hyder Emil. That was one of the craziest, most explosive multi-punch combinations I've ever seen anybody take. Laura Sanko was losing her mind on the broadcast. Hyder Emil got in his face and unloaded a 50-60 punch combination on him, just relentless storm, and he absolutely broke Zhang Yang Li. I mean, he took so many shots, he was hurt so many times, buckled down, and the ref stepped in. So that was a really tough loss for Zhang Yang Li. I mean, absolutely getting tornadoed by Hyder Emil. And in this fight, even though I think it's very interesting and this is a tough fight because I think the previous opponent that Zhang Yang Li had was going to be an easier fight for him, but Daniel Santos, even coming off a 2-year layoff and even taking the fight on short notice, I think is a much better step up in competition than what Zhang Yang Li was going to fight. And even though he has a full camp, and he's been prepared to fight, I think this could possibly be a tricky fight for him. I think Daniel Santos could be slick enough, fast enough on the feet to give him problems. And even though I normally don't go with a guy who's taken a fight on extreme short notice and has been out so long, I think this is one of those situations where Daniel Santos could actually pull this off. Zhang Yang Li, Daniel Santos could come out, he could wind up looking good for a round, he could wind up gassing, he could look out of shape, it's very possible, and then Zhang Yang Li, the more prepared fighter winds up taking the decision. It's very possible, but I am going to take a slight chance in this fight, and I am going to pick Daniel Santos by decision. I think he can come in even on short notice, even with the other disadvantages he has going on right now, and just with his slick striking, I think he could make this fight close, and I think he could edge it out. And if he can get in Zhang Yang Li's face like Hyder Emil did and just overwhelm him with shots, be the faster striker, I think he could pull it off. So I think Daniel Santos is going to pull this fight off, probably 29-28 on the judges' scorecards. Maybe Zhang Yang Li takes a round in there. I think this could be a real close fight. I think it could be a razor-close split decision that goes either way, but I am going to go with Daniel Santos by decision on this one. All right, moving on up, we are looking at Modestas Bukauskas versus Ion Cutelaba, and good lord, this is such a coin flip fight. This is a tough fight because Ion Cutelaba, for how dangerous that man can be, he has some of the worst fight IQ in UFC history. He's very hot-headed. He's kind of like a light heavyweight Cody Garbrandt, where he's calm for a minute, and then the minute you start hitting him or he gets in a firefight, he just starts going apeshit, and he starts getting real hot-headed. He starts hunting you. He starts swinging wild, and he used to be really bad about that a few years ago. I mean, his fight IQ would just drop, and he would get caught. Magomed Ankalaev caught him in both fights, knocked him out in the second fight. He's been submitted in multiple fights because of that poor fight IQ. But one thing with Ion Cutelaba lately is that he has started to kind of bring that hot temper down, and he's starting to fight a little more measured. He's still sloppy, and he is still wild throughout the fight at points, but he is starting to be a little more measured, where even if he does get a little hot-headed and starts to throw a lot and starts to make mistakes, then he will start mixing in wrestling. And the one thing that has been getting him back on track recently is his wrestling. So he'll mix in explosive takedowns, keep you down, submit you. He's really starting to kind of turn down the heat on that hot-headedness that seems to kind of infect him a lot. And then on the other side, Modestas Bukauskas, was in the UFC for a little while, had some tough losses, got cut, and now he's back, and he's looking really good. He's looked really good in his last 2 fights, but it's still fully hard to tell where Modestas is fully at. Is he going to be able to stay on track and beat, upper, mid-level to upper guys, or is he just going to kind of steamroll some lower level guys and then start getting, knocked back down? It's kind of hard to say with Modestas, but his striking has looked improved. He's looked more patient. He's looking like he could be a solid problem. And even in this fight, even though this is such a coin flip, this could literally go either way. Cutelaba could come out, hit him with a bomb, knock him out. He could overwhelm him with wrestling. But then Cutelaba could come out making hot-headed mistakes, and Modestas is just the better technical striker. Picks him apart, hits him with a shot, knocks him out, or gets him down and submits him. So it really is that close of a fight. And, Cutelaba has stung me in the last 2 fights where I thought he would probably lose the fight, and then he wound up pulling it off kind of at the last second. So this is a tough pick. And, this could wind up biting me either way. It's one of those 50-50s. But in this fight, even though Ion Cutelaba is starting to kind of correct some of the hot-headed mistakes, I still do not fully trust him. He still gets a little wild. He still gets a little out there, a little too much going on. And then those higher level, better technical strikers, can kind of start to find their range and pick him apart, as long as they don't get caught with a big shot. And Modestas has been caught with big shots before. He got knocked out by Vitor Petrino about a year and a half ago. So it is possible that Cutelaba lands that shot, but I am going to go ahead and trust that Modestas Bukauskas can be the better, calmer, sharper technical striker, and as long as he doesn't eat a giant bomb or get taken down relentlessly with his wrestling, I think Modestas can do enough on the feet with the range, with the sharpness, with the power, and I think he can pick Cutelaba apart. Now, I went back and forth on this finish because I think Modestas could hurt Cutelaba badly on the feet. You kind of stumble him down, drag him down, and submit him. Modestas does have some submission wins, and Cutelaba has lost multiple fights by submission. So I do see a path to where Modestas could wind up hurting him and submitting him. But I'm just going to go ahead and say that Modestas picks Cutelaba apart for the majority of the fight, and he picks up a unanimous decision. I think he'll probably pick up a 29-28, possibly a 30-27 unanimous decision, but I feel like Cutelaba is probably going to make it a little close and steal a round, maybe a round early half with takedowns, and hopefully Modestas can get back up and start to pick him apart. But I am going to trust, I'm going to flip the coin and hope it lands on Modestas to pick this fight up by being the better, calmer technical striker at range, and hopefully he doesn't eat a bomb, and hopefully he doesn't get taken down and just relentlessly ragdolled. But I'm going to side with Modestas to pick up this win by decision, but it's very tough. All right, and moving on to the very next fight, we are looking at Navajo Stirling versus Ivan Erslan. And a very interesting fight here at light heavyweight. Navajo Stirling, came in his last few fights and looked pretty impressive. In his last fight, he was looking pretty good. He started to struggle with the cardio a little bit. The fight got dragged out, and he did pick up the decision. But, he did look pretty good outside of the cardio issues that he started to kind of seem to struggle with. And Ivan Erslan, coming off the loss to Ion Cutelaba, close fight, back and forth fight, lost that fight by split decision. Then before that, picking up the win against Bogdan Grindko in KSW. So he's up and down, win, lose, win, lose, win, lose, nothing super special. And Navajo, on the other hand, trains out of City Kickboxing, which is one of the best MMA gyms on the planet. That's where Israel Adesanya trains, Kai Kara France, Dan Hooker. Some of the most elite fighters on the planet come out of City Kickboxing, and it's a very, very good gym under Eugene Behrman. So that right there gives Navajo Stirling a ton of advantages. He's tall, he's 6'4", he's got a 79-inch reach, and he has a massive reach on Ivan Erslan, and I think that's going to do him wonders in this fight. And I just can't see Ivan getting past the long-range striking, the technical striking, the mix-up of the kickboxing. And you've got to believe that Navajo's in there training with Adesanya. He's training with Dan Hooker, getting that range, finding that perfect kickboxing timing. And I think Navajo Stirling in this fight is going to find all the proper shots, and I think he will most likely knock Ivan Erslan out. Now, if he's not able to find that KO shot, and maybe the cardio starts to kind of drain a little, I just think that he will outstrike Ivan Erslan. He will be the cleaner, more technical kickboxer, and he will just find those open shots, get around the slower Erslan. And if he doesn't knock him out, he's picking up the decision, no question. Probably a 30-27. But I'm going to go ahead and bank that Navajo can land enough clean shots on him to hurt Ivan Erslan and TKO him. He has been knocked out before. So we're going to go Navajo Stirling on this one. All right, let me go ahead and expand my menu here, just so I don't have to do these individually. I thought I had already done that. We are moving on up to Jessica Andrade versus Jasmine Jasudavicius, and a very, very interesting fight here at flyweight. Jessica Andrade, you know, is an absolute UFC veteran. She's a complete pit bull, one of the hardest fighters to deal with on the feet just because of her pressure, brawling style. She never stops coming. She never stops attacking. Now, for all that pit bull aggression that Jessica Andrade has, and she's one of the hardest hitting power punchers in the female division, in the flyweight division, she is an absolute beast to deal with. Her fight IQ is very poor sometimes. She does a lot of wild brawling, a lot of just throwing power hooks, coming at you, just hooks. She doesn't set up her shots. She's not very technical. She's just very powerful, and she's very aggressive. And sometimes that works out for her against lower level, kind of mid-level fighters, and then when she fights higher level girls, those higher level girls with the better striking just pick her apart. And they pick up on the reads, they start to figure out her patterns, and they just pick her apart, and it becomes much easier for those higher level strikers. And in Jasmine Jasudavicius, she's not a super high level striker, but she's pretty good on the feet, and she's got really good grappling. She's got great submissions, you know, on top. She's very top heavy, very strong. And in this fight, she is going to have some huge advantages. She is going to be very, very big compared to Jessica Andrade, who is only 5'1". Jasmine Jasudavicius is 5'7", and she's going to have a considerable reach on her. So, you know, she's got a lot of advantages in these areas. You know, she's got solid striking, she's got great grappling, she's got good jiu-jitsu. And when girls come up against Jessica Andrade that are just more well-rounded, that are more technical, that are more patient, I am normally going to always favor the more technical, patient striker when it comes to a Jessica Andrade fight. Even though that pressure is immense, those hooks are hard to deal with, that power is hard to deal with, Jessica Andrade just has not really improved on that fight IQ. You know, and she's only 33, she's still young, but she's not really evolving and making considerable changes in that area. She has been fighting the same way for years. And again, it works out for her sometimes, and then a lot of times it doesn't. I mean, you look at her last few fights, she has more losses than wins because of that poor fight IQ. And I think in this fight, I think Jessica's going to make it tough. She's going to make it gritty. But I think Jasmine Jasudavicius is just going to be able to pick her apart a little bit with certain clean shots on the feet. And then I think Jasmine's going to get her down, take her down, and control her on the ground. And I think this could be an easy path to a clean decision for Jasudavicius. I think she could easily just hold her down, control her, wrestle her for 15 minutes. But I'm going to take a chance on this one, and I'm going to say that Jasmine Jasudavicius picks up a submission on Jessica Andrade. She has a really nasty Bravo choke, and she has submitted a handful of girls with that choke. She submitted Ariana Lipsky with a Darce. Let's see, there's another one, the Darce choke, which is pretty much the Bravo choke. So, I mean, I think she could wind up catching Jessica Andrade on the ground in a scramble, wrapping up that neck and grabbing that Darce. And she has picked up most of these submissions in the third round. That seems to be her round where, like even years ago when Brian Ortega was submitting a lot of guys, he was catching guys in the third round. That just seemed to be his golden round to pick up the submission. And I'm going to go ahead and give Jasmine Jasudavicius the shot to pick up that submission in the third round. I think she'll deal with a little bit of Jessica on the feet early, start to pick some shots, time a takedown, grab a leg, get her down, lay on top of her. Do the same thing in the second round, and then by the third round, Jessica Andrade will be a little tired. She'll make a mistake in a scramble, and I think Jasmine will lock up a submission. If she doesn't, she's going to pick up a pretty clean, unanimous decision win. So we are going Jasmine Jasudavicius by third round submission on this one. All right, and we are looking at, in the next fight, Mike Malott versus Charles Radtke. And this is a very, very interesting fight here at welterweight. Mike Malott, has looked pretty solid in his UFC run outside of his loss to Neil Magny, which was kind of a crazy loss because Neil Magny used to be a very solid test in the division, a gritty veteran, a really hard, tall, long, lanky striker to deal with. And Mike Malott was winning the early half of that fight, and then it looked like he started to gas, and Neil Magny just came back, took him down, beat him up on the ground, and TKO'd him. So it was kind of a shocking loss for this up-and-coming prospect. And, in his last fight, he did pick up a pretty solid win over Trevin Giles. Not saying a whole lot. Trevin Giles is very, very lower level, very barely mid. So, not a very solid fighter, but a solid performance by Mike Malott. And, and he seems to have the fundamentals of kickboxing, good ones, good twos. Nothing super crazy, not a lot of KO power, not a lot of fast combinations. But on the other hand, Charles Radtke does have that power. He does have pretty fast hands. He's got nasty shot selection, and he's knocked out quite a few guys. He knocked out Matthew Selmesberger in his last fight, rocking him on the feet. He stood back up, pretty much TKO'd him on the feet. Before that, knocking out Gilbert Urbina with a good left hook, so he's got nasty power. And in this fight, even though this is a very tough fight, this is kind of a coin flip fight, because even though Mike Malott has looked impressive for the most part outside of the Neil Magny win, I don't see anything from him that's like super standout. Like, he's not super dangerous on the feet. He's just like a good shot selector, edging rounds, edging striking, picking up decisions. And, he doesn't seem to be a super big threat outside of just being a pretty just well-rounded guy on the feet. But Charles Radtke, on the other hand, even though it's still hard to say where he's fully at, even though he's knocked out some pretty decent competition and his hands look good, I kind of went back and forth on this. And even though Mike Malott seems to be kind of the safer bet here, as just, edging the rounds, being a little more well-rounded, I actually have a feeling that Charles Radtke could wind up putting the pressure on him, putting the power on him, and putting the hands on him, and really hurting Mike Malott. I think this is going to be a back-and-forth fight. I think it's going to be close. I think Mike Malott's going to be, throwing kicks, throwing shots, throwing body shots. But I think Charles Radtke can kind of close in on him and land the more damaging shots, have the bigger moments. And I think that's what could possibly happen in this fight. Now, Mike Malott could just keep the range, land kicks, land shots, not get hit with anything too bad. But I think Charles Radtke has shown that he's got a little more pop in his shots and a little more power on the feet. And I think if Mike Malott has kind of a less than perfect performance, this could be a tough fight for him. And Charles Radtke does train with Belal Muhammad, so the cardio is going to be there, the hands, the power, the striking. And I am actually, in this fight, I am going to side with Charles Radtke in this one. I think he could probably get in Mike Malott's face. I don't think the odds are out on this fight, but I think Mike Malott will be the favorite in this fight. So by probably like a -140, -120, somewhere in there maybe. So I am going to go ahead and give Charles Radtke a shot to make it gritty in the first round, come out, put some shots on Mike Malott, hurt him, bust him up, and I think that he can wind up getting the knockout. If he doesn't, I think he can eke out a close decision. And if Neil Magny is catching Mike Malott at his age and him slowing down, I think Charles Radtke could probably do it. So I'm going to go ahead and take a shot on Charles Radtke by KO in this one. All right, and now we are moving on up to probably the most useless, frustrating fight of the night. I don't know why this fight is on this card. I don't know how either one of these men are still in the UFC. This is one of the most pull your hair out, punch your eyeball in fights that they could possibly make. I mean, you want to talk about the battle of the underwhelming, you should have been cut a long time ago, bottom of the barrel fighters. This is it. This is such an annoying coin flip, and I don't even want to deal with this fight. I hope it gets canceled, because this is just a headache either way. But we're looking at Marc-Andre Barriault, the power bar, versus Bruno Silva, and two very underwhelming aging fighters that are just not good. Marc-Andre Barriault is just, they call him the power bar. It's kind of fitting, because he's kind of this power, not too good at any one thing, not a super elite striker, doesn't have knockout power, not really good at grappling, but he's just kind of tough. He's got that just powerful kind of toughness outside of his last fight where he got absolutely slept by Joe Pyfer. And, Marc-Andre Barriault, he's just kind of there. He's just tough. He's not really good at anything in particular, but he just hangs in there and he's just gritty. And then you look at Bruno Silva on the other hand, and he's just awful. I mean, loss after loss, getting submitted by Brendan Allen, Sharabulat Margamedov. Then in the fight with Chris Weidman, he was winning that fight barely, and then Weidman started poking him in the eyes. The ref kept allowing it. Then they stopped the fight, gave the win to Weidman after multiple eye pokes. So he did get kind of screwed in that fight, but he still didn't look that good in that fight. And then his last fight against Ismail Nardeev, he looked awful, just got completely kind of steamrolled in that fight. So in this fight, I went back and forth on it. It's a coin toss. You know, it really is just, you know, flip the coin. So many silly little things could happen in this fight. And I went back and forth, and I'm looking at it going, you know what? I don't trust Bruno Silva that much. I don't trust Marc-Andre Barriault a whole lot, but he has looked lightly better than Bruno Silva. That's all I can say about it. He's looked lightly better, and he's not coming off as many losses. So with that in mind, I am going to go ahead and I am going to give Marc-Andre Barriault a chance in this fight. And it could wind up backfiring. Bruno Silva could come out and just wind up outstriking him just barely, picking up a split decision. But Marc-Andre Barriault just seems to be the little bit of a busier fighter, a little bit more well-rounded, which you can hardly even say. And I'm just going to go ahead and flip the coin and say Marc-Andre Barriault will do just enough to squeak out a just rat hair ass of a decision. So I think Marc-Andre Barriault will get it done, but, you know, Bruno Silva could come out, put a lightly more long-range shots on him a little bit, and he could pick it up. But we're going to go Marc-Andre Barriault by decision. I won't go too much deeper into it because it's a super frustrating fight. You know, it's going to be the battle of the low-level, bottom-of-the-barrel strikers. So, you know, and whoever loses gets cut. That is 100% happening. The loser of this fight is goodbye. Thanks for staying. Thanks for putting on a, you know, a okay career, but time to go. So the loser of this fight will be cut. But I'm just going to stick with Marc-Andre Barriault in this one and say he squeaks out a very underwhelming, very boring decision. All right, and now we are moving on up to Brad Katona versus Bezakat Almakhan, and a very interesting fight here at bantamweight. Brad Katona, you know, very solid fighter, been around for a little bit, you know, and he's been a little win-lose, but, you know, very just a solid, well-rounded striker, test on the feet, you know, nothing super high level, nothing super special. And then you look over at Begsat Almakhan, god dang, Almakhan, geez, there's a lot of A's, a lot of L's in there, some K's, some N's, but looking over at Bezakat, one thing with him is that I remember back, he was the kid that fought Umar Nurmagomedov on short notice, and that was about a year ago, a little over a year ago. And in that fight, I remember that he actually gave Umar Nurmagomedov a little trouble in that fight. He was actually having some success on the feet. He was having a little success like defending the grappling for a little bit, and I remember being surprisingly shocked that he was actually giving Umar, who at the time was one of the hottest streaking, you know, Khabib 3.0 problems, he was actually kind of showing resistance in that fight and making it difficult on Umar. And it was very impressive for a kid that just kind of came in. I believe he took the fight on short notice, and he was giving Umar some issues, you know, and that says a lot for a kid that's coming in on short notice fighting what wound up becoming a future title contender. So, you know, in this fight, Brad Katona's tough. He's well-rounded, not super great in any one area, not a big threat. But I think if you're coming in and you're giving Umar Nurmagomedov some problems early in a fight, then you're going to be a problem for a lot of the middle of the division. And in this fight, I think that he will very, very highly likely just beat Brad Katona up on the feet. I don't know a whole lot about him outside of his fight with Umar. He might have some grappling in there. I'm not entirely sure. But it looks like, you know, he's just been an absolute, outside of the Umar loss, he's been a big problem. And he was on a streak before that. So I'm just going to go ahead and trust, you know, all I needed to see was one fight where you're giving Umar Nurmagomedov some headache, a little bit of issues, and that sells me enough to tell me that you're going to beat someone like Brad Katona. So I'm going to go ahead and side with Bezakat Almakhan to pick up the decision in this one. I think it'll be probably a real easy 30-27 for him. You know, and Brad Katona, you know, he's okay, but he's not great. And, you know, I think this will be a solid win for Begsat. All right, we are moving on up to one of the best fights of the night, and I cannot wait to talk about this fight. We are looking at Benoit Saint-Denis versus Joel Alvarez, and this is such a fantastic fight. Benoit Saint-Denis, you know, when he came into the UFC, he was looking like the next problem, the next big thing. I mean, he was just running through guys left and right. He was on an absolute tear, submitting Ismael Bonfim, TKOing Thiago Moses, TKOing Matt Frivola with a nasty head kick, and it was looking really, really good for him. Like he was going to be the next contender, the next big problem out of France. And then he hit a wall in the Dustin Poirier fight. Now, in that fight, in his defense, I believe he was dealing with staph infection and he was on antibiotics. So he was, yeah, it was staph infection because he had the staph wound on his chest. So in that fight, he was sick, he was compromised, and his cardio tanked bad. After about towards the end of the first round, he was already looking tired, already looking gassed, and I was like, oh, this isn't good, because you cannot gas against someone like Dustin Poirier, because Dustin Poirier has endless cardio, endless boxing, and he will come down, he will beat the dog shit out of you, and he will wind up manhandling you and just chewing you apart, and that's what he did. He came back, TKO'd Benoit Saint-Denis, and just dropped him with that hook, hit him with the follow-up shot on the ground, and that was night-night. So he was a little compromised in that fight, but that was a clean, legit loss there to Dustin Poirier, and then he came out and he got absolutely dominated by Renato Moicano. He got cut open in that fight bad, got busted up on the ground really bad, and I was willing to give him a pass on the Poirier fight, but then when he got dominated by Moicano, who's not that good and very mid-level, I was like, oh boy, I think this might kind of be the end of the hype train for Benoit Saint-Denis. This might, where he might start to hit a wall now. And then you look over at Joel Alvarez, and he has looked absolutely fantastic. I mean, submitting Mark Diakese, TKOing Elvis Brenner, then the TKO of Drakkar Klose. He has looked absolutely phenomenal. One of the most impressive prospects out of Spain, you know, pretty much outside of Ilia Topuria, where that's where Ilia is originally from, but he trains, you know, and lives, I believe, in Georgia. So, I mean, Joel Alvarez has just looked fantastic. And it almost seemed like if this fight was happening like a year and a half ago, maybe 2 years ago, I would probably be siding with Benoit Saint-Denis here. And, you know, I kind of wanted to possibly give Benoit a chance in this fight to get back on track. But looking over at Joel Alvarez, man, he's just looked too good. He's looked too impressive. He's looked like he's just not going to stop anytime soon. His striking has looked excellent. His jiu-jitsu's looked excellent. And he just looks like an unstoppable problem right now. And now it's like we don't know where Benoit Saint-Denis sits. Does he get back on track and make up for 2 hard losses? Or does he just start to tank? And some guys start off real well, and then they just go off a cliff and they never recover. And I don't think Benoit is completely done. But to come off 2 hard losses, one being to a mediocre kind of mid-level fighter like Renato Moicano, I think it's going to be problems coming up against someone that's so good on the feet and so well-rounded as Joel Alvarez. And I think Joel Alvarez would steamroll Renato Moicano. So in this fight, you know, I wanted to give Benoit a chance. I know he's had it tough. But right now, I just cannot see myself picking against Joel Alvarez. And I think the first round's going to be interesting. It's going to be back and forth. It'll be, you know, pretty kind of a war. And then I think Joel will start to find his timing, and then he'll start to bust Benoit up on the feet. And I think he will wind up TKOing Benoit Saint-Denis in the second round. And, you know, hopefully it's a war. It's back and forth. It's a close, maybe split decision fight. It'd be nice to see Benoit get back on track, but I think Joel Alvarez is such a problem right now. He's one of those fighters where it's just like, and I think he has like 100% finish rate. I believe he's finished every single fight he's won. So, you know, that's a problem too. And I can't see Benoit getting around this test. It's a tough comeback fight for him right now because, I mean, Joel's just looks so good. So we're going to go Joel Alvarez by second round KO. All right, and now we are moving on up to the legend Jose Aldo versus Amin Zahabi, and a very, very interesting fight here at bantamweight. And, you know, in this fight, Amin Zahabi has looked pretty damn good recently. He's on a really good streak, picking up a lot of wins. Ricky Turcios, Arichi Lang, Javid Basharat, which is very impressive because the Basharat brothers are some of the best fighters in the company right now, some of the best strikers. And then he picked up a very solid win over, kind of like the mid-level gatekeeper Pedro Munoz. And he looked good in that fight. He looked sharp. He was outstriking Pedro, and that's hard to do. Not a lot of people can cleanly outstrike Pedro Munoz, but he definitely did in that fight. And then you look at the legend Jose Aldo, and he is 38 years old. He is old. He's getting up there, but Aldo is still looking good. He is coming off the loss to Mario Bautista by split decision. Not gonna ding him a whole lot there, because Mario Bautista's, he's a solid test, but it was a very close fight, and there was a case for that to go to Aldo. And then before that, he picked up the win against Jonathan Martinez, which was very impressive because Jonathan Martinez was one of the biggest, up-and-coming streaking guys, a very heavy leg kicker, very hard to deal with at range. And Aldo was able to solve that puzzle and get around it and, outstrike Martinez. And in this fight, I went back and forth on this because Ayman Zahabi has picked up a lot of steam. He's looked really good on the feet. His brother, Faraz Zahabi, who owns TriStar Gym in Canada, trains GSP, so he comes from a martial arts background and family. And, that does a lot of good things for him in these fights. But I kind of went back and forth on this, and the one thing that is making me lean towards Jose Aldo is speed. Just the speed of his strikes, the combinations that he throws. Aldo is so good, that fast twitch muscle reaction of throwing kicks, throwing body shots. He's so quick. And Ayman, even though he's got solid boxing on the feet, he's not super fast. He doesn't throw fast combinations. He doesn't mix up a whole lot. Sometimes he'll throw a kick, mix up a shot to the body, but Aldo is just fast. And even though he's 38, he's still got that fast twitch speed, and he's hard to deal with. And, I could see this kind of being like the Mario Bautista fight where, it's real close and Ayman is landing the proper shots in between Aldo's, counter shots, and he's starting to edge the rounds. That very well could happen. Maybe this is the fight where Aldo starts to officially slow down just a tiny bit. But so far, Aldo has still looked pretty good, and he's still quick. His speed has not left him. And I think this is going to be a very, very close fight. It's going to be a competitive banger on the feet, a pure strike fest, and it really could go either way. I could see Ayman picking up the biggest win of his career, but I am going to go ahead and stick with Jose Aldo in this one by decision. I think he'll just be a little faster, he'll be sharper with the combinations, and he will just get to the target a little more than Ayman. But if Aldo comes out and he kind of freezes up and he doesn't throw leg kicks and he kind of sits back, just kind of jiggling his hands around, just trying to find those shots, Ayman could just wind up pop shotting him and steal the rounds. But I'm going to go ahead and stick with Jose Aldo to pick up a very close, competitive, probably split decision on this one. All right, now we are moving on up to Alexa Grasso versus Natalia Silva, and a great fight at women's flyweight here. Alexa Grasso, the former women's champ, versus the up-and-coming Natalia Silva, and Natalia Silva has looked absolutely fantastic so far, picking up so many impressive wins. The TKO over Victoria Leonardo, Andrea Lee, who is bottom of the barrel, not very good. Not saying a whole lot there on Andrea Lee, but still a win. Viviana Araujo, who's very tough and well-rounded, and then Jessica Andrade. So she is looking like the next streaking contender at flyweight, and she's looked very good. And Alexa Grasso coming off the very, very shocking and unexpected domination loss to Valentina Shevchenko way back in September at the Sphere. And a lot of people were expecting that fight to be very competitive with their history. The two prior fights before that, the draw, and then the fight that Valentina was winning, but then threw the spinning back kick and made a mistake. So a lot of people were, including me, were expecting Alexa Grasso to be competitive in that fight, and it was not even close. Valentina came out with a perfect game plan and said, you know what? She thinks I'm going to stand and strike with her this time. Let me flip this on its head, and I'm going to wrestle her the entire time, throw her game plan off, and just dominate her. And that's what Valentina did. Valentina came out and completely dominated Alexa Grasso for 5 rounds, and it wasn't even close. So she is coming off a really, really tough, unexpected loss, an unexpected performance. Had no takedown defense at all. And I'm looking at it going, I'm not fully counting Alexa Grasso out just yet. I don't think she's done, but that was a really concerning loss that she took, and Natalia Silva has just looked great. And in the striking statistics, Natalia Silva is the more accurate striker. She has a higher land percentage, and she has less strikes absorbed. And I think she's ahead on Grasso by about like 2% on those or so, maybe a little more. So Natalia Silva is just a well-rounded package. You know, she's got great striking, she's got good cardio, she's got good grappling. And I think in this fight, I think this could be a tough fight for Alexa. Alexa's striking would have to be absolutely perfect in this fight to get this done. You know, and, you know, it's possible it is. It's possible she's just the better veteran striker and edges this fight out. But I think Natalia Silva is just looked too impressive, and she's just too much. She's going to have a very well-rounded game plan, and I think it's going to be tough for Alexa. So, I think this is going to be, competitive. It's going to be a strike fest on the feet. It's going to be back and forth. But I can't go against Natalia Silva right now. She's just looked too good. She's got a better strike percentage, less strikes absorbed. And that last fight of Alexa's kind of had me a little concerned. Like, you got totally dominated, had no takedown defense. And if Natalia Silva comes out with solid takedowns, she's probably going to get them. So I am going to stick with Natalia Silva in this fight to continue the very impressive streak. All right, we are moving on up to Valentina, the Bullet Shevchenko versus Manon Fiorot, and what an absolutely phenomenal fight at women's flyweight. And I am a huge Valentina Shevchenko fan. She's one of my all-time favorite fighters. I think she's the greatest female fighter on the planet. Despite, Amanda Nunes being a double champ and all that, Valentina, in my opinion, has just looked more impressive in her career, and she should have beat Amanda Nunes back when they fought 6-7 years ago. She won that fight. The judges screwed her, so she technically beat the GOAT, and it was a really bad decision, so Valentina should have a win over Amanda Nunes, and I think she's just more well-rounded than Amanda Nunes. I think if her and Amanda Nunes ever rematched, Valentina beats her. So I think Valentina is the greatest female fighter of all time, and she looked incredibly impressive in the win against Alexa Grasso in the rematch. And if you think about it, that draw and that loss to Alexa Grasso, I'm not going to hold a lot of weight in those, because Valentina was winning the first fight with Grasso cleanly, easily, and then she made a stupid mistake and she threw a spinning back kick completely unnecessarily. She took the risk, exposed her back. Grasso took her down and submitted her. So it was a just clean, bad, poorly timed mistake on Valentina to throw that spinning back kick. If Valentina doesn't throw that spinning back kick, she wins that fight. And who knows if there was even a rematch with Grasso right after. There probably wouldn't have been. So she costs herself in that fight, and then in the second fight, she wins the fight 48-47, but the dumbass judge, Mike Bell, you're a horrible judge, Mike Bell gave Grasso a 10-8 in a round that was clearly a 10-9. And because of that 10-8, that wound up making the fight a draw. If he had given Grasso a 10-9, which he should have, Valentina wins the fight 48-47. So technically, Valentina realistically should be undefeated against Grasso, but she cost herself in the first fight, a fight she was winning, and then poor judging cost her in the second fight, but she made up for it in the third fight. And, it just shows that Valentina's not done. Valentina is still there. She's still the champ. She's still fantastic. She's still one of the best fighters on the planet, even at 37. And Manon Fiorot has looked great. She's been very impressive. One of the best strikers in the female division. I mean, walking through Mara Breno Silva, Jennifer Maia, Caitlin Ceremonia, Rose Namajunas, her biggest and most impressive win, and then Erin Blanchfield. So she's very, very good, very slick hands, very sharp striking, very good cardio, and she has more than earned this title shot. And I went back and forth on this because I think Manon Fiorot can make this fight competitive. I think she can do very well in this fight. But this is her first title fight, and she's fighting the best female fighter on the planet. And Valentina is just a handful. She's so strong. She's got great striking, great counter striking. She's got a strong base, great grappling, great takedowns. Valentina's very well-rounded, and Manon Fiorot has not fought anybody this well-rounded and at this level yet. And even though I think Manon Fiorot can be competitive and maybe steal a round or two from Valentina with slightly better striking, I think this is a little too soon for her. And she's 35, Valentina's 37, but she's 35. So she has a shorter window to kind of enter her prime and get to this belt. And she's looking good, but I think Valentina is just a little too well-rounded. And Valentina's very smart. She has high fight IQ. So even though I think Manon Fiorot has a chance at making this a close fight, has a chance at possibly pulling off this upset, I'm going to go ahead and say that Valentina is just too much, too well-rounded, and she shows why she is the best female fighter on the planet, and I am going Valentina Shevchenko by decision. I think she picks up a 48-47, most likely, maybe a 49-46, 41, but I think 48-47, 3-2. I think Fiorot can maybe steal a round or two, possibly, but maybe she doesn't even do that, and Valentina just takes it 4-1, 49-46, or she comes out with a completely dominated game plan like she did against Grasso and makes it a 50-45 and just dominates her for all 5 rounds, but I don't think that'll happen. I'm going to say Valentina picks it up a clean, unanimous decision, 49-46 or 48-47. All right, and we are moving on up to the main event of the evening, and we're looking at Belal Muhammad versus Jack Della Maddalena, and this is such an interesting fight at welterweight here. We are looking at the most boring, uninspiring, most headache-inducing fighter of all time, Belal Muhammad. We can all unanimously agree he is just awful. You know, he's a fine fighter, he's a good fighter, but good lord, the guy is just so boring, so uninteresting, not very likable, you know, and there's a reason the UFC put off his title shot for so long, because they did not want such a boring, uninteresting fighter being a champion. It was more than obvious why they made him go through hell to get that title shot. And then we look at Jack Della Maddalena, and he's one of the best fighters in the welterweight division, one of the best. He's probably the best striker in the welterweight division, in the top 3. Some of the best boxing you will ever see. Beautiful combinations, beautiful striking, great speed, great technique, and he has looked so incredibly impressive. I mean, streaking Danny Roberts, submitting Randy Brown, Basil Hafez, Kevin Holland, Gilbert Burns, you know, getting taken down by Gilbert Burns in that fight, but then coming back and TKOing him. And Belal Muhammad has looked absolutely incredible. Outside of his old losses to Vicente Luque, you know, back years ago, he picked up that rematch against Vicente, looked great against Sean Brady, looked great against Gilbert Burns, and then dominated a very underwhelming, checked out Leon Edwards, you know, and I didn't hold a lot of stock of that win because Leon just looked like he didn't even want to be there in that fight. He didn't even try. If you look at the first fight from the Apex years ago, I mean, Leon was absolutely destroying him, you know, head kicking him, hitting him with clean shots, just piecing Belal up. And in the rematch, Leon just stood there. He didn't do anything. And Belal just started to outstrike Leon and just, you know, overtake him with, you know, okay boxing, decent hands. But Leon didn't throw anything in return. Leon's the faster, sharper, more powerful striker and did nothing in that fight. He just accepted getting outboxed by Belal on the feet, and his striking is not world-class. It's fine. It's decent boxing, but there's no reason Leon should have just stood there and gotten outstruck like that. And he even said, I was just checked out in that fight. I felt off all week. I don't know what it was. So, you know, Belal dominates a very underwhelming Leon, but Belal is still very good. His wrestling's very good. His cardio's very good. His pace is very good. His pressure's very good. And in this fight, you know, I want to give Jack Della Maddalena such a chance in this fight because on the feet, he's outstriking Belal. On the feet, as long as this fight's on the feet, Jack Della Maddalena's winning this fight because he is the better boxer by miles. But what I worry about is that Jack Della Maddalena has never been in a 5-round fight. So, you know, and Belal Muhammad has been in many 5-round fights, many. He is conditioned for 5-round cardio. He's been in multiple, you know, championship fights now. You know, so Belal's going to have the wrestling, the championship experience, and the 5-round edge. And those are key factors in championship fights. And even though Jack is such a good striker on the feet, and I see so much potential in him, and I'd love to pick him in this fight, and I hope he knocks Belal out. We all hope he knocks Belal out, because he will be a tremendously more exciting and interesting champion than Belal ever was. But in this fight, I just cannot get past all the 5-round experience Belal has. And even if Belal starts to fall behind in the striking, guess what? He's going to start to go to the grappling. And I think he can win at least 3 rounds of grappling in a 5-round fight. And that's all you have to win. Even if you don't finish your opponent, all you have to win is 3 rounds to win a 5-round fight. And I think Belal can do that. And the other concerning thing is Jack Della Maddalena got taken down almost 8 times by Gilbert Burns, which is very concerning. Gilbert Burns is a great grappler. He's a great jiu-jitsu fighter, but if you're getting taken down that much by Gilbert Burns, that's a problem. And then you look at a guy like Belal, whose bread and butter is his wrestling. I think that's going to be a recipe for disaster. So unfortunately, I don't want to do it. It pains me to do it, but I am going to pick Belal Muhammad by decision in this fight. I think the wrestling, the 5-round experience, the championship experience, and the cardio is going to edge out 3 rounds. And I think Belal will probably get it down 49-46, 48-47 on the cards. All right, ladies and gentlemen, if you liked what you saw here, please hit the subscribe and like button. It massively, massively helps me out. And I will see you for my predictions for UFC 316 very soon. Take care.